All right. So the webinar has begun. We'll give just a couple of moments for folks to join. It looks like we've got about eight folks in the audience at this point, including a couple of people who will be our presenters tonight. All right, so we're going to call the meeting to order at 7:05 p.m. We'll do our roll call. Krishna Kumar,
Present.
Frank Chauvin,
Present.
David Martin,
Present.
Karen Gall emailed earlier to say she was not able to join. Howard Kurtzman also had emailed a couple of weeks ago with a conflict. Ian Hawksworth and Tanya Shand. Okay. With 4 of 8 members present, we have a quorum. Our agenda tonight includes three primary items. The first will be a presentation by both the Shaw Main Streets and by U Street Main Street. There have been a number of conversations with business community leaders and amongst this committee about the role that the Main Street programs play, especially as we're having conversations about the formation of a bid in the greater U Street corridor. And so this was a carryover item actually from last year's committee and the last term, seeking to invite the Main Streets to present and to educate us as a committee, but also the broader community on the work that they do. We have 2 resolutions, draft resolutions that are coming before the committee. The first one that we will cover after the presentation by the Main Streets programs, and then of course subsequent Q&A will be the bottle bill resolution that was considered at the last commission meeting, and based on some questions and feedback from the business community, was forwarded to this committee for additional feedback before we return it to the commission with a recommendation for an up and down vote. And then we will spend some time on a draft resolution that's been submitted by one of our fellow commissioners, Commissioner Barrio, who is the chair of public safety, but who has taken a personal interest in housing density. That ties to the comp plan, and so it has gone before ZPD a couple of times, but it will be coming to us, given that we are the committee primarily responsible for engaging on the comp plan feedback process. So with that said, and welcoming Ian Hawksworth, who is now here, so 5 of 8 committee members, I am going to promote our panelists. Alex Padro from the Shaw Main Streets, promote to presenter or promote to panelist. Brian Dornbush, who is representing the U Street Main Street, also going to promote to panelist. And then Brian, as you come on, there's Ed. Okay, good. Edward Wycliffe, who Brian will introduce, also from the U Street Main Street. And so we have our three presenters. Alex looks like he might be getting cold outside, but we wish him all the best on Rhode Island Avenue and 9th Street. Let's do this. If you don't mind, starting Alex with you, because I know that you are a familiar voice, and then turning to Brianne and then to Edward, if you can all introduce yourselves. Before I do that, however, Ian, I saw your hand is up. Want to make sure that.
Yeah, just apologizing for being late and present. Thank you.
Excellent. Welcome. Good to have you here. So Alex and then Brianne and then Edward. Alex, if you don't mind, brief introduction to yourself. And then I know you're going to be introducing Shaw Main Streets in just a moment, but I want to make sure folks have a chance to get to know who you guys are individually.
Sure. So I'm Alex Padro. I'm Executive Director of Shaw Main Streets, have been since 2004. And I'm also a 23-year Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner, currently representing 2G02, just to the south of ANC 1B.
Great. Thank you so much. Just for the record, Tanya Shand, committee member, also here. So we now have 6 of 8.
Good evening.
Hi, Tanya. Good to see you. All right, Brianne.
Hi, commissioners and everyone on the call. My name is Brianne Dornbush. I'm founder and executive director of District Bridges. We manage the U Street Main Street as well as 5 other main streets, including Columbia Heights, Mount Pleasant, Lower Georgia Avenue, Logan Circle, Cleveland Park, and Chevy Chase. So wonderful to be with you. Happy to talk. I love talking all things Main Street. So
Exactly right. And Edward.
Hi, I'm Edward Wycliffe. I have been with District Bridges for about 1.5 years now. I was previously serving in the role of Director of Strategic Partnerships, working with the Community Navigation Team, who engage with our unhoused neighbors. And now I'm transitioning into a role of the U Street Main Street Manager.
Very good. Well, welcome. We're glad to have leadership on U Street, and so look forward to getting to know you better and working with you in the year ahead.
Absolutely.
The goal of this of the presentations tonight was maybe threefold. So the first is that the Main Streets do play an important role in 1B along the U Street corridor in particular, and we haven't had a chance as a group to spend time with all of you in a formal way. Alex will join committee meetings on a semi-regular basis. But we've not really spent a lot of time talking about the Main Street. So we want to make sure we have a chance to do that. The big focus really is what are the services that the Main Streets provide that the business community should be accessing. So essentially the question of value. How is it that we ensure that the business community on Greater U Street is getting the maximum value out of the Main Streets, such that they would describe the Main Streets as absolutely irreplaceable, my first go-to, et cetera. So want to kind of learn from all of you, have you teach us about those types of services, so that as we are having conversations with the business community and as business community members participate with us, we've got that information to share. And then thirdly, want to make sure that we have an opportunity for some Q&A, as again, we just seek to get individually smarter and to open this up to community discussion as well. With that said, I know some of you had provided or have developed a presentation. There's no need for formal PowerPoint, but Alex, I know you had, and if you want to start, I'm going to do kind of a really rough timing, which is, let's see if is about a 10 to 12 minute, allow 10 to 12 minute kind of formal presentation enough, and then we'll leave it more for kind of open Q&A. Is that I don't want to cut folks short, but I also know we can't do two 30-minute presentations.
Understood. We'll try to comply.
Okay, that sounds good. And it's kind of a loose thing. We're targeting as opposed to enforcing.
So if I could share my screen, I do have a couple of slides.
Great. And I think I just clicked the button that said allow.
Great. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you what it is that Shaw Main Streets does for the community. As I mentioned, I've been the executive director of the organization since 2004. And the organization received its initial DC Main Streets grant back in 2003. And I will share with you our service area boundaries. So we have a pretty large service area. Most of the southern end of our service area is actually in Ward 2 and a little piece in Ward 6. But the area mostly north of S Street, between 11th and 6th, the west and east, and then Barry Place and Florida Avenue at the north, with a little piece on Georgia Avenue connecting. Those are the rough boundaries of the portion of our service area that is in ANC 1B's jurisdiction. So obviously we have a number of major assets there, and also some challenges as well. I mean, major assets, like the Howard Theater and the 930 Club and Howard University Hospital and Howard University itself. Challenges in terms of the nightlife area on the 1900 block of 9th Street that has some very complicated issues that we continue to try to address as best we can with the resources that we have available. So, in case you're not aware, the Main Streets are primarily funded through the Department of Small and Local Business Development. This has been the responsibility of a number of different agencies over time, starting with the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, and then ultimately now with DSLBD. So, what is it that Main Streets do? One of the things that we're most known for is holding events. We actually founded the Art All Night Festival here in the Shaw neighborhood back in 2011. And we expanded it citywide in 2015. Now it attracts hundreds of thousands of people from all over the city over 2 nights. And we bring about 30,000 people to the Shaw neighborhood, on the night of Art All Night. Many of our businesses say that is their best night's business of the entire year. Some businesses open only at night for Art All Night. Other major events include our open house events and Small Business Saturday, which are promotions for our retail businesses. Eat, Drink, Shaw, which is a food and beverage showcase that we hold every year at the Howard Theater. But we also have smaller events like Black History Month events, history events, and the like. Promotion of our businesses in our neighborhood are an integral part of what we do at Shaw Main Streets. And as an example, this is our few pages and the cover from the current issue of Mid-City DC, which is published by Capital Community News. So in every issue, 12 months of the year, Shaw Main Streets has the back page. We run an ad which is promoting some of our upcoming events or individual businesses. And here in October of this year, we have from Ward 1, El Techo, Lee's Flowers, and Mita. The other 3 businesses are Ward 2 businesses. We have monthly spotlights on 2 or 3 businesses in our service area. This month we have Lee's Flower and the Card Shop. And we also have another ad that's promoting our 6 Michelin-starred restaurants. So we believe that we have more Michelin-starred restaurants than any neighborhood on the planet. We haven't actually gone to Michelin to ask them to confirm that, but we're going to get around to doing that one of these days. So we're very proud of the fact that we, at the community's request, we curated and developed the Shaw Main Street's service area as primarily a dining and entertainment destination district. One of the critical services that we provide is a clean team or a clean and safe team that is operated by Career Path DC, one of the contractors that has several dozen of the main streets around the city and bids clean teams. So our service area, unfortunately, does not extend to our Main Street. Entire Main Street area. So the service area for the clean team does not completely overlap. So we have portions of 6th, 7th, T, 11th streets, but not all of them. So if you have a question about exactly where our service area is, I'm happy to provide a map subsequently. The teams are out 7 days a week. However, because of budget constraints, there are partial days on several days, and we're only able to really do one pass through our service area. So if, for example, on the 1900 block of 9th Street, the team members hit that block first thing in the morning to try to deal with trash from nightlife activities the night before, by noon, very often that particular block is very trashy because of the significant amount of foot traffic that it does receive. We also paint over graffiti, do planting and tree box maintenance, and remove stickers and other types of waste from our service areas. We also have a very aggressive public art program. This is one of the more recent murals that we've done in ANC 1B. This celebrates Faith, a community leader that we lost a couple of years ago. It was very active politically in the city, but we responsible for public sculpture as well as murals. Another one of the murals that you probably recognize is the Marvin Gaye mural over at 7th and S Streets. We make direct grants to businesses using funds that we receive from the District of Columbia government. This is the owner of Inizio Salon on the 600 block of Florida Avenue in ANC 1B. These funds can be used for signage, new equipment, new furnishings. We recently have completed a campaign on offering about almost $20,000 in the private security camera installation grants. The city provides a rebate of up to $750 for equipment, not for installation. So this was very welcomed by businesses that decided that they wanted to move forward with installation of grants. We also, as part of our two retail promotions every year, give out $5,000 to individuals to spend at our businesses, which are then reimbursed to our businesses in the form of these Shaw bucks. They look like $5 bills, but instead of Abe Lincoln, we've got Robert Blue Shaw, the neighborhood's namesake, on the front. And in addition to the funds that we make direct grants to our businesses, we also assist our businesses with applications for Great Streets. That's a program that provides up to $80,000 for a variety of different business purposes. And we've managed to help to secure about $1.5 million in Great Streets grants for our businesses over the years. Technical assistance takes many different forms. Sometimes it's a matter of providing training to businesses and business owners and their staff on how to use social media effectively to help to promote, but also navigating the district bureaucracy and technical issues. So the photographs on the upper left represent a rear alley entrance to the Dunbar building in ANC 1B, which was the site of a lot of nefarious activities that were taking place. The owner was desirous of trying to close off that entrance. Department of Buildings and previously DCRA refused to grant that permit because there were some challenges that related to the code. We were able to successfully lobby for both DDOT and Department of Buildings to see their way clear to be able to close off that entrance with a new steel door that allows for emergency egress only. And then the photograph on the lower right represents some commemorative signage that has been added to several of the alley segments along Wilberger Street, recognizing some notable businesses and institutions along the street. We've also put up plaques honoring individuals like Cecilia Scott, the founder and longtime proprietor of Cecilia's restaurant in the building that is now incorporated into the Shaw development there at the corner of Wilberger and T. So those are just a couple of slides that I wanted to offer you help to illustrate some of the things that are the primary activities that the Shaw Main Streets undertakes as a steward and a supporter for all of our businesses and the community overall. Everything is organized under 4 committees, in case you're not familiar with how Main Streets work. And other than myself, everyone is either a volunteer or a contractor, and our board members are representative of both the longtime residents of the neighborhood as well as longtime business owners in the neighborhood in our service area, including Lee's Flowers and Industrial Bank. How did I do, Matt, time-wise?
I think it's great.
Great.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was perfect. Let's do a couple of Q&As for Alex, then we'll turn to the District Bridges folks, and then we can kind of do a general Q&A at the end. Any questions from the committee members first, and then we'll turn to the audience. So Frank, I see your hand up, and then to Ian.
Yes, thank you, Alex, for that presentation. I am going to be asking this to both teams, your team and then Ms. Dornbush. But there's been discussion here at this committee, and but predominantly at the Alcohol Committee of ANC 1B that I am a member of, and it has to do with power washing responsibility by uh, business owners. Where does that responsibility lie? But I want to include in that also trash pickup. I mean, the 1900 block of 9th Street, these people just leave and expect the city to create a beautiful space. And I think there's more responsibility that should be undertaken because of limited resources by responsible business owners. When you leave your shop at 12, 1, 2, 3, there's no reason you can't be looking after your frontage, your sidewalk, and picking up so that the guy that comes through in the morning or doesn't come through because of budget cuts with your team, doesn't have to spend all day in the 1900 block of 9th Street. But it's endemic with no power washing and no responsibility by business owners predominantly. I can't paint with a wide brush saying there's none that do. I just don't see them and think they all fall back depending on city services that get cut. So can you talk to me? I'm going to ask Ms. Brianne about this also, but what can we do to have these business owners take more responsibility? And what are your thoughts here on those two matters?
So sure. So firstly, on the issue of power washing, there is no requirement by businesses to power wash the sidewalks in front of their establishments. Some of them do have hoses that they use to wash off, uh, you know, uh, the sidewalks in front of their businesses. But I would say that those are just a handful. Uh, Shaw Main Streets is contractually required, as are the other, main streets that have clean teams, to have their clean teams do power washing once a quarter. But the funding that is available really only allows about 4 block faces to receive that power washing. So. Um, that's not certainly sufficient to be able to properly maintain those sidewalks. In terms of how trash is handled, and that is obviously a major issue, as you're aware, or some people may not be aware. There is no alley behind the west side of the 1900 block of 9th Street. So this is as a result of the construction of the Artview condominium, which closed off what had previously been an areaway that allowed for trash removal from the rear of all these businesses. And that's the reason why we have all those trash bins on the sidewalk, which not only prevents pedestrian flow on the block, but also invites illegal dumping. And there's a major illegal dumping problem on this block. We regularly are removing mattresses, televisions. There's a microwave that just appeared on the corner of 9th and T just yesterday. I think that yes, business owners, can do better, and we would endeavor, Shaw Main Streets would endeavor to encourage our business owners to do more along those lines. We actually just had a walkthrough that the Mokers helped to coordinate with a number of agencies just yesterday on the block. And I think there are a number of initiatives that several of the business owners have proposed in terms of doing more regular cleanups and working with the community to help to keep the block cleaner. So hopefully those are some insights that can be instructive to you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Ian.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. It's impressive and well done, and congratulations, and long may it continue. Can you say a little bit about financing? How is it done? What challenge do you have? Is it sustainable? Your donors, what are their concerns? I'm trying to think of how to ensure that initiatives like this are sustainable, both in terms of popular support, obviously, but also in terms of financial support. Thanks.
Certainly. Firstly, the grants from DSLBD do fluctuate slightly in some years. We've been very fortunate that the Council's Committee on Economic Development has been very supportive of the Main Streets over the years and has provided some additional funds in certain years. It's basically about $150,000 is the base grant per Main Street, and then in some years there can be up to another $40,000 that's provided. So right now we're in one of the leaner years at 150. The clean teams are funded not on an equal basis, but they are also not funded based on the size of the service area. We receive about $230,000 for the clean teams that operate on 7th, 9th, and 11th Streets. And then all of those government funds are supplemented by private sector fundraising, which we undertake primarily through the sponsorship and ticket sales for the Eat, Drink, Shaw event that happens every spring at the Howard Theater. We have developers, businesses, utilities, and the like that are some of our most common sponsors. Folks like Events DC as well, that are other stakeholders within our service area. So overall, we have some years it's a little higher, but it's about a $500,000 a year to work with, and that certainly doesn't go quite far enough. Is it sustainable? It's private fundraising has become much more challenging post-pandemic, but we're the lights are still on and the doors are still open. But certainly in the days when development was thriving in the neighborhood, fundraising was a lot easier. It's much more challenging right now that all development activity is basically frozen, with rare exception as a result of current interest rates. So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, those. Thank you. So can you say a few words about volunteers? How much do you rely on them? How do you organize them? How to make sure that they do what you want them to do, etc. I mean, speaks from experience. It's not as easy as one would hope.
Oh, well, absolutely. So again, Main Streets are primarily volunteer organizations. These are volunteers that are generally neighborhood residents, but in some cases they're employees and even business owners. The volunteers come in over the transom, but we also do some active recruitment of volunteers during the course of the year. We do some volunteer recognition events as well to thank them for their efforts. We put them to work within each of the committees. So for example, where events are concerned, volunteers help to plan and staff activities like Art All Night and Small Business Saturday and Shaw Open House, and we have volunteers that do our accounting for us. We have volunteers that help to put out newsletters and have helped to manage social media for us. We have volunteers that do what they do professionally, like being lawyers and accountants, and folks that just want to get their hands dirty and plant, flowering plants in the spring every year. So we have volunteers that put in scores of hours every year, and we have volunteers that just work on one activity or one project every year. So if you're interested, or if anyone that's listening this evening is interested, you can reach out to us at either by phone at 202-265-SHAW, or send us an email at info@showmainstreetsinc@gmail.com.
I'm sure they have a lot of fun, and I'm certainly considering it. But how many people are involved, would you estimate?
So we have usually we have about 200 people that do some level of volunteer service during the course of a year.
Okay.
And again, that can be a board member that puts in dozens of hours, or it can be a volunteer that works 2 hours at one event.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Ian. Krishna.
Yeah. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Alex, thank you again for coming in. We have tangled many times in the past, and
Tangled is I don't know if that tangled is the right word.
I'm trying to create some drama here, okay?
No,
I
drama llama here.
Okay, so two quick questions for you. And you didn't really talk about this today. You sort of just referenced this, yet you were very proud of the neighborhood having 6 Michelin stars. And I know that you were very involved in that process of trying to do that. I wonder if you could just give us a few more granular details about how you started that, when you started it, to go to what Ian was saying. How did you get the money to get the interest in that going? I think that's a great story. That's one of your there's a lot of accomplishments you guys do, but I think that's one that is not a quasi-governmental service, which is and so it really stands out. And second question is about one of these quasi government services. I think that you said that the clean teams do not come up onto you or Florida, and I just wanted to see, was that still the U Street Main Street doing that, or I know at one point the Lower Georgian Avenue Main Streets was clean teams were working on parts of that section, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. So, in terms of how we ended up being able to be such a restaurant destination, uh, all Main Streets, as part of their initial activities, are required to undertake a visioning exercise, which allows the community and stakeholders to express their desires for what the neighborhood will look like and what types of businesses should be attracted. And when we did that initial visioning exercise and conducted some extensive surveys throughout the neighborhood, at the beginning of our organization's service, the answer that we got back was that they wanted to see places where people could eat and drink in the neighborhood, because folks were not happy that they had to sometimes get in a car or take a public transportation to a different neighborhood to be able to enjoy that. So with that as our marching orders, we worked with the major landlords in the area to help them understand the type of tenants that we hope to work with them to attract. And they were very responsive because ABC licensed establishments are among the highest rent payers for commercial space. We began by reaching out to notable chefs, in the DMV, and inviting them to consider establishing new restaurants and bars in Central Shaw. And lo and behold, before too long, they started coming, and we have had nationwide award winners, both James Beard Award winners, as well as National Cocktail Competition Award winners. Be some of the anchors of our commercial district as a result of that. In terms, and also, all of those efforts, yielded a 2016 Great American Main Street Award for Shaw Main Streets. We're one of 3 DC Main Streets that have received those. The only 3 Main Streets in the country every year get what is considered the Oscars, if you will, of a commercial revitalization. And we're it. We got that back in 2016, and we'll continue to be grateful for that recognition. In terms of the clean teams and where we cover and what we do not cover, so we do not cover any part of U Street with our clean team. To be honest with you, I'm not even really sure who is covering that. There's been a Ward 1 team that has had that responsibility, in addition to some other neighborhoods. Lower Georgia Avenue has had some responsibility for parts of Florida Avenue and Georgia Avenue. But basically, our team doesn't go any further than the 2000 block of 9th Street, along 9th Street, and we don't go on Florida Avenue, beyond 6th Street. So again, I can provide a map if it would be helpful for you to see that.
Good. Let's do this. I want to make sure we have a chance for members of the community to ask questions. Gene Hamza's hand is up. Alex, it would be good to find out, maybe it's between Alex and Brianne, who is the clean team responsible for that area of 6th and T, 7th and T?
No,
7th and T.
Seventh and T is in Shaw Main Street Service Area. So, so south of Florida Avenue, we do have that.
I
Got
also
it.
popped in the chat. District Bridges, we don't manage any clean team grants, but we've worked really closely with Career Path DC. They have managed they've been managing the Ward 1 clean team, but I believe Beacon Brightwood was managing the Lower Georgia Avenue clean team, and then that one was recompeted to another grant, but I'm gonna have to look up what that one was. It wasn't one of the Career Path DC is the one that manages most of our Main Streets corridors clean teams, but I can look that up.
And I'll reach out to DSLB and find out what the clean team assignments are too, so that we can get that out. As you might imagine, that's usually the one thing that people get really frustrated about is street cleanliness. And so it's important, if those are not connected to the actual main street, that the ire is not directed towards the main street. Gene Hamza, I see your hand, and then we will transition to Brianne and Edward.
Well, I just want to ask Alex, why, if there's no services north of U Street, is that in your service area? I
Because
don't understand. You must be getting, there's some incentive, money, whatever it is, for you to cross U Street.
so the funding for the clean teams and the service area designations have never matched, even when we initially started our operations. It was then the deputy mayor's office established where they wanted to see clean teams operate. Main Streets competed for those opportunities initially, and then in the case of 11th Street, we were able to get funding through our council member to be able to add that. But the Ward 1 council member, although she has provided some additional funding for a block or two in different directions. For example, the 1900 block of 8th Street was added most recently as a result of funding that the council member was able to provide. The council member has never asked for funding for additional coverage north of Florida Avenue.
Okay, so then why are we in the Shaw Main Street area? I'm not trying to belabor an issue, but that didn't answer my question.
So-
Why are we in your service area when you don't service us?
We don't provide clean team services, but we provide the other services to the
Which
businesses.
Which are?
Did you see the PowerPoint that I presented earlier?
I did.
Okay. So
Okay, well, I'll let it go there. All right. Thank you.
sure.
Okay, thanks, Gene. Brianne and Edward, if you don't mind taking us through a summary of the U Street Main Streets and U Street Main Streets, and then we'll do a similar quick Q&A.
Absolutely. And I've got some slides if you could let me present. And I'll also just share, Edward has transitioned from our community navigation team over to our Main Streets team as of the 1st of October. So he's in week 2 of Main Street World. So I'm going to be giving the presentation. He's just starting to develop his relationships on U Street and all that good stuff. So I'm not going to throw him straight into the deep end today. Maybe next week, week 3.
Very good.
All right, here we go. Let me just hit send. All right.
Great.
You guys can see my screen.
We can.
Perfect. Okay, so District Bridges, we are a community ecosystem development nonprofit. We manage 6 main streets, as I had mentioned previously. We were born out of a very grassroots community effort that was the Columbia Heights Day Festival. Back in 2005 was when the organization first started the Columbia Heights Day Festival. And after several years of the festival, they established the 501c3 determination back in 2007. I got involved with the organization in about 2014, 2015, and I was in the process of dissolving another organization and pitched to the board, what if we took this and made it into a full-time organization? And they said, you've got a job, go for it. And that was what really started District Bridges. So when I first got started, we had the Columbia Heights Mount Pleasant Main Street was our first Main Street program. And what was unique about that was that it took 2 neighborhoods and smashed them into one grant and said, make it work. And what was challenging about that is both of those neighborhoods are very distinct. They have different challenges. They have different businesses. It's a different field, they're different neighborhoods. And so what we did was we actually developed a multi-Main Street model out of that. And so our second Main Street grant was for Lower Georgia Avenue. And we started developing a multi-Main Street model to build more capacity, more equity, and more efficacy into these programs. And so fast forward to today, back in 2019, this fateful year of 2019, we applied for 3 Main Street programs, Cleveland Park, U Street, and Logan Circle. And we thought it was great. We were so excited to launch these new programs. We were, got started in October, and then 2020 came upon us. And so we all know how that story continued. And so that was when our U Street Main Street program got started back in 2019 and 2020. So a really weird year to start a Main Street program, especially because so much of the Main Street work is in-person relationship building, community, being out in the community, developing those trusted relationships. I have all of our values listed up here on this slide. And honestly, we've actually been having internal conversations as a team saying, really, all of these values they boil down to one, and that value is relationship. Everything that we do is built on that relationship, the relationships that we have with community members, with community partners and stakeholders like the ANCs, like other Main Streets, like our government agencies, like our business owners. But it's building those trusted relationships that really is the magic that makes Main Streets special. The small business support programming. So we have our 6 Main Street programs. We also have an online technical assistance platform called Access Point, which we built that out of a need that we saw in our communities. So we would go to a business and say, what kind of training do you need? What kind of support do you need? And they'd say, I need a marketing training. So we'd get the bagels, we'd get the spot, we'd plan it around their schedule. And then the day of the training, no one would show up. And we'd go back to them and say, why didn't you show up? And businesses would say, oh, my staff member called out, or my son got sick, or, there was always a reason. Business owners are really busy. They've got lots of things that they're managing. And so we realized we needed to bring training and support and resources on demand to businesses. And so we started building those resources through an online platform that we call Access Point. So that's another way that we're trying to just build more equity into these programs. Alex touched on this around the boundary issue. One of the challenges that I see the DC Main Street programs facing is that the boundaries, again, sometimes they're kind of arbitrary. It's the way that the RFP, the government has selected those boundaries. That kind of looked at a Google map and said, here and here is where this ends. But here in DC, there are 74,000 small businesses per statistics, the SBA statistics, and that's actually counting businesses that are under 50 employees or less, not the SBA definition of 500 employees. Main Streets cover about 4,700 businesses in total across the 29 programs that we have. And so there's a huge equity gap in terms of the services that Main Streets are able to provide to small businesses and the programs that are able to meet those needs for all businesses. So we also have 11 business improvement districts. But the difference between a Main Street and a business improvement district is that BIDs do not provide technical assistance in the traditional model here in DC. It's not that they can't, it's just that's not how traditionally it's been done. And so I think, in terms of trying to provide that direct support to businesses, Main Streets really have that sweet spot. And we actually have data to back that up. When you look at the number of Great Streets grants that are awarded across the city, there is a much higher number in Main Street corridors than in other areas of the city. And that's because you have a Main Street manager or a Main Street director who can help you with that application. Again, business owners are really stretched thin. They've got lots of things on their plate. Thinking about writing a response to an RFP, getting a grant application together is often not at the top of their list. And so, our team often works really closely with our small businesses on putting together those applications so that they have an opportunity to go after those funding opportunities to improve their businesses. Like Shaw and actually all Main Streets here in DC, we are required per our grant agreement to provide at least $40,000 in direct small business grants to our small businesses in our corridors. We do that through a competitive process. So we try to make that as equitable as possible. None of our staff are involved in the actual selection of the grants. We have a committee that we pull together from the community to make those selections. And part of that process, often we'll do additional points if you're a first-time applicant and never received funding from us, or if there's a specific focus area, for instance, a specific facade improvement grants or grants that can demonstrate increased revenue over, this will increase my revenue by X% if we were to receive that grant. So sometimes we put those different criteria. And that's also allows us to be responsive to the needs of the community. So if we're seeing challenges that our community is facing, one of the things that we have done on the U Street corridor is really focus on the security camera program and trying to help businesses getting those security cameras or making other adaptations to their facade or their security, their doors, things like that, windows, to make sure that their buildings feel safe, that their staff feel safe in their buildings. One of the things that our community navigation program has done is to help train business owners or their staff on how to respond when an individual enters their business who may be having, maybe overdosing or in a moment of crisis, whether that's mental or, substance use issues, of trying to prepare those business owners because they're often the people who are on the front lines of addressing some of those issues. So that's kind of, I have a few other slides. I'm kind of getting into the weeds a bit. Want to make sure I touch on all of these. Like all of the Main Streets, we have our we all follow the 4-point approach: economic vitality, design, organization, promotion. And that is for all of those, some of the elements of the small business, like what does small business technical assistance look like? We use a methodology. We have our business health check, which is a basic intake form of really trying to ask businesses questions to understand how they function, what some of their challenges are, what some of their strengths are. And that then helps us align the resources that we have available that we use then our business development plan. So saying to the business, what are your goals? What's your vision? If you want to franchise your business or have additional locations, let's start planning for that and aligning resources to help you achieve that. If your plan is to retire and sell your business and move to Boca Raton, that's great. But let us help you make that plan now so that you don't get to the point where then you just have to close your business and the corridor loses a business that they love because we weren't planning ahead. We also do a lot of business surveying. We're working with the DC Policy Center to kind of promote their business sentiment survey to our corridors to really try and get as much data to make data-based decisions. And then, as I mentioned previously, the competitive grants. These are some of the high-level things on the DC Main Street program more broadly. As Alex mentioned, it's provided through DSLBD. The methodology comes from the National Main Street, the Main Street America. This year, the grant amount is about $67,000. The budget is broken into half administrative and half programmatic expenses each year. And I don't want to be repetitive to some of the things that Alex shared. And then our community navigation program. So our community navigation program is separate from our main streets, but kind of it is very connected, especially on U Street. We in 2021 saw a real explosion of need in our unhoused population and individuals who are experiencing substance use disorder and other mental health challenges. And so we developed our community navigation program because we had seen a contraction in social services from a lot of the different organizations that were providing that direct outreach. And it's not necessarily that different services were not being provided, but it's the connections between those services that is often missing. And so if you're an individual in crisis, our fundamental belief that it should not be your responsibility to know how to navigate the system. And so our community navigators are literally individuals who help navigate people through those social services systems. And the reason why this is connected to economic development is our small businesses, our brick and mortar businesses are often the ones on the front lines of meeting these individuals. They have the encampment in front of their business, or the individual has come into their business to use the restroom, or is asking for food, or different things. And so preparing those businesses on how they can respond in those moments. 911 is not always the best solution. Calling the police is not always the best solution, and there are other options available to business owners. And so that was part of where our community navigation program has grown. It is funded through the Department of Behavioral Health, but we also work with, we have trainings on Access Point to help staff and business owners on how to respond in these moments as well. And then this is a slide about Access Point, which I've already kind of spoken about. And then our contact information. And I'm happy to share these slides with you guys to share around as well.
Great. That'd be fantastic. And again, very happy to have Edward there. Joining you, it has been many, many years, or at least it feels like many years, without a point of contact on U Street. So, Edward, you're welcome. We're looking forward to getting to know you. We're definitely looking forward to working with you. And I know I'll be back in touch. Scott Pomeroy in the audience had his hand up quite a little while ago. So before we turn to committee members, I'm going to let Mr. Pomeroy speak, and then Krishna, I'll come to you on the committee.
Yeah, Brianne, nice to see you again. My question for you is, why has U Street really been such a difficult place to maintain a manager? This is Edward is going to be what, your fourth or fifth different manager on the U Street corridor since 2019, and I have my own opinions of why it is, given the current boundary lines and the split with Northern Shaw being part of what Alex has been branding the eastern part of U Street as. How difficult is it to have that boundary line split right down the middle of U Street to maintain someone or the interest of people along U Street when it's confusing about what the actual boundary should be?
So I will say I don't think that the boundary is the issue around maintaining the manager. I think I'll address the boundary issue. I think that I would love to see a reimagining of how boundaries how the Main Street programs are administered from a systemic level. I think there are other ways that the programs could be administered that would be able to provide more equitable service across an entire ward. But I think from the boundary standpoint, our goal should be to make sure that no business is left out simply because they're not on the right or wrong side of the street. I think that should be the goal. I think one of the challenges that we've found on U Street, one was the program launched in 2019, 2020. And so kind of getting the foothold with the community during the pandemic was difficult. There's also the the density piece of like, you have a lot of apartment buildings where people are either transient, they're coming, you know, they're there for a period and then they leave. So you get a really great volunteer who's really committed and then they move to a different neighborhood or they, you know, move on. And so you have those challenges of turnover in the volunteer base and kind of that commitment to the program. I also think, you know, the program, it's a challenging job. The Main Street job is a challenging job. And so I think there have been some just challenges in keeping staff in general. So we have always taken the approach of hiring individuals to kind of cultivate them. And that often means that somebody will only stay for 18 months to 2 years. And so that we've kind of built into our model of recognizing that we are going to have churn in our staff, but that's also where our institutional knowledge is really important. So we have our Salesforce database that has all of the contact information and history of technical assistance that's happened with each business that we work with. And so even if we have a new Main Street manager come in, they're able to pick up where the last one left off. And I think that's something that's really important. And from, again, going back to the systemic level, I think that's something that's really important as well from an agency standpoint. I would love to see a more unified approach to how DC Main Streets are approaching data collection and management of those pieces. That's my personal opinion. I'm a data nerd. I love that kind of stuff. But I think it also helps us make more informed decisions on programmatic activities, grant funding, all of those kind of things when we're able to see trends in different communities. I don't know if that answers your question fully.
Great. No, I think it's a good answer to start. Scott, thank you. And thank you for being here. I'm going to turn to Krishna and then to Frank.
I think you're on mute, Krishna.
You're quite correct. And thank you. Brianne, I was just saying thank you for coming tonight. And Edward, I just wanted to welcome you. Thank you. I hope you can find the time to join us at future times. I think we all have the same interest at heart. Even though sometimes, as I alluded with Alex, we always have small disagreements, but those are between friends because we're really trying to accomplish the same thing. I guess my question, I got 3 questions, and it's sort of, most of these are directed at Brianne because you were the one talking, but I think the last one will sort of be directed at Edward. You know, what I was hearing from you, Brianne, is that you're providing a lot of technical services for the small businesses in your area. And I know that's very valuable. I remember there's a number of them on U Street that have mentioned how they appreciated you guys doing that. And so that is needed. But what I didn't actually hear is anything really about branding and marketing. And I wondered if you wanted to just expand on that a little bit and talk to us about that, because I think that is one of the frustrations for residents is the U Street brand is not doing well. It's a nationally known brand, but when I talk to friends here in the city or elsewhere in the region, they mostly associate U Street with crime now, which is not a positive. So branding questions versus technical support. 2, I just wanted to go back on this clean team stuff. I know you had sort of addressed this, but I'm still a little confused because actually the Career Path DC, this is the first time I was hearing about that they're the ones running the clean teams. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that and give us some explanation, because my understanding before is that, you know, give us just some more insights on how you guys see that problem, because you're the ones who are actually doing it. And the last point, and this is just for Edward, you know, Lindsay, who was the last U Street manager, had done a great job organizing a giant event along U Street. I think that was actually a pretty good success. I think the turnout and response that people had was really positive. It was really great to see. I remember I was just walking down U Street and there's 200 to 300 people watching a performance. She had gotten some of her friends like dress up in glitter spacesuits and walk up and down U Street and do selfies and stuff like that. Just really made a big difference. And I'm just wondering, where you're thinking about in terms of events, and how have you thought about that?
All right. So first one I'll answer on the clean team. So the clean team, when our first Main Street program with Columbia Heights Mount Pleasant, it was on an off year of the Main Street competition, or the clean team and Main Street grants were like not on the same path. So we worked with Career Path DC our first year. They managed our Main Street program, or our clean team program in Columbia Heights and Mount Pleasant. And we actually had a really great relationship with them. If we ever needed anything, if we ever got complaints from businesses, I would call Charlie and he would get his team on point. And so when it came to the point when the grant became available, it didn't really make sense for us to compete for that grant and potentially take it away from Career Path because they had been doing a good job. And that was just kind of how we have worked more as working with them from a partnership standpoint. I think one thing that, and Alex, you can chime in on this because you actually manage the clean teams. I think the Main Street clean teams are grossly underfunded. And if you look at the comparison of a business improvement district's clean team and the Main Street clean teams, it is not because they're not trying to do as good of a job. It's that they don't have the funding to match what the bids do. And so if we're asking the Main Street clean teams, and I'm using Main Street clean teams, not that we manage the clean team, but the clean teams that are managing the Main Street areas. If we're asking them to clean at the same level as a bid, but with half or a fraction of the funding, that's just, it's an unfair expectation. And so I think that's one of the challenges that those programs are facing. I think the other piece, the clean team programs, Career Path DC, they're a workforce development program. Like, yes, they are cleaning, but it's also about workforce development. And so thinking about how are we incorporating other terms of other ways to fund those programs, not simply saying that DSLBD has to be the only source of funding for those programs. I think there are other ways that can be coupled. But then if you look at an area like U Street, you have the density and foot traffic of areas, other high density areas like downtown. But again, you don't have the clean team to match that. And so this fragmented approach to there's a bid here, there's a Main Street here, and then there's kind of a hodgepodge of clean teams, you're not going to get that unified approach or the unified service level that you would if you had a unified approach to that. So I think, I've been working with Councilmember Nadeau on the management authority and kind of looking at what are some other ways that we can imagine how programs in these high density areas can be administered that can kind of layer support, where it's not saying, expecting one organization to be able to do all of the things with a fraction of the budget to be able to meet those needs. So I think a layered approaches would get us better results. So that's kind of the clean team piece. On the events and engagement and the marketing piece, again, this is going to go back to budget. So I would love to do a much larger branding and marketing effort for U Street. We have designs for a banner project and all of those other pieces that we would be like actual physical be able to be physically implemented along the corridor. We do have very active social media. We have a U Street, multiple U Street handles. We have a business newsletter, all of that kind of stuff. But to do the actual physical installation is also very costly. And as Alex also alluded to, the fundraising piece is also very challenging. So one of the challenges that I see from the Main Streets from a philanthropy perspective is that you have 29 Main Street programs in the city. There are about 3 or 4 philanthropic organizations that fund nonprofits here in DC, and they have been funding the same organizations for the last 30 years and do not fund new organizations. I was literally told that by one of the bigger ones. They're like, but keep applying. And I was like, I've been wasting the last decade applying and we're never getting funding. So a lot of those projects, this last year, we were able to, the DSLBD had funding to do what they called the growth funds. And those were $50,000 grants, or up to $50,000 grants, to do a big project on your corridor that could have one of those big impacts. And Alex, I'm sorry, I don't know what your project was, but one of our we did a facade improvement project on several facade improvement projects on Lower Georgia Avenue. We did a rat abatement and garbage disposal thing in Mount Pleasant. Different things like that. But like some of those windfall grant funding opportunities allow us to do some of those bigger branding projects. The other piece is also the length of the corridor. So if you're trying to do banners along a long stretch of corridor, that's going to cost you a significant amount more than if you have a short condensed corridor like Cleveland Park, which is literally 2 blocks long. And so sometimes that's the investment. So, we've always kind of debated on, do we put the investment into businesses and support businesses directly, or do a banner project, meaning that we can't put as much direct support to businesses, but we have banners on the street poles. So like that has been something that we've always kind of, we have internal conversations. We have a neighborhood strategy council, which is made up of individuals who kind of help, they're the advisory board for our Main Street programs. And they help to kind of determine how we allocate the funds each year. And to this point, when presented with, let's do a banner project or an art installation, they have always leaned towards the technical assistance and small business grants, direct supports of small businesses. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that is all that we want to do. Fundraising on U Street has been very challenging. We have some developers who have kicked in, but not very much. And going back to some of the challenges that Alex has shared about just the fundraising environment. Back in 2016, when we first got started, our average donation from small businesses was $2,500 to $5,000. Today, we have more donations, but it is now the average donation is between $500 to $1,000. So the amount has shrunk, even if more people are giving. So the total amount is essentially about the same. Oh, and then the last one was the events. Yes. So the glitter ball people, the disco people, that was actually Art All Night. As Alex mentioned, we are one of the programs that does Art All Night as well. So U Street, Logan Circle, Mount Pleasant, Lower Georgia Avenue, and Cleveland Park all did Art All Night this year. We had smaller budgets this year than we did last year. In talking with the agency, they said last year they had expiring funds, so everyone got a really nice bump in budget. And so, when Lindsay left earlier this year, we didn't really have the full capacity to do additional fundraising to really beef up what we wanted to do with U Street. But we did have U Street Art All Night. We plan to do that again next year, as well as some additional events. This year, we only did digital version of Dog Days, but hope to bring that back in full swing for next year.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Frank, you are next.
Yes, Brian, thanks for being here. And Edward, welcome to U Street. Look forward to working with you. Brian, I have some questions. I'm confused because I've heard your District Bridges, or was it just U Street Main Street, was not had not applied to reinstate their Main Street program coming up here. You were expiring your work in this area. Is that untrue? I don't know.
Yeah, that's untrue. That's untrue. So okay. So basically earlier this year, so part of our budget is made up of federal funds. So January was a not great month for me or the organization. We had 2 foundation grants that were ripped up because they were DEI grants, which was a hit to our budget. And we had 2 of our federal grants that we got stop work orders for. And so at that point, I had never experienced, I thought if you had a contract with the government, you had a contract with the government and you would get your money. I had never experienced that you could just have that ripped up. And so back in the early beginning of this year, especially with the issues around the DC budget and the continuing resolution, I didn't know if the DC Main Street programs would continue. And we were not in a position financially to continue managing the programs if funding was decreased from the current levels. And so I had a very frank conversation with the agency and basically said, we can't run these programs for less than the current budget allocation. So if these programs, if what's allocated in the upcoming FY26 budget is less than, we'll have to decide whether or not we can continue. And so it was not, at that point, it was not a decision to walk away from this work. It was literally a financial imperative. I can't pay people and give them health insurance and, pay for all of the things to run an organization if we don't have the funding to back that. And very fortunately, the funding came through, not only at the $150,000 level, but that at $167,000, which was, they basically, I don't know that they made permanent the enhancement from last year, but they were able to add the enhancement that was added last year to the FY26 budget. So we intend to fully, manage these programs. One of the things that we had said back when I had these very frank conversations with the agency was I had told our entire team, we are in uncharted territory. If you find a more stable job right now, you should take it. I don't know what the future is, and I cannot make promises. I cannot make promises of what October will bring. I believe in being very transparent with my staff. I'm responsible for a lot of people's livelihoods, and I didn't want people to be caught off guard. I didn't want to have to be one of those organizations that shut down and everyone was laid off the next day. And so, the last 10 months have been some of the hardest of my professional career, to be very frank. And I'm very happy to be in the position that we were able to weather that storm. We've had to make some really difficult decisions, but I think in kind of bringing everything down to the bare bones, we're going to be able to rebuild stronger. And I think we've actually learned a lot of things from these last 10 months as to how to navigate in this different environment. And I think these programs are more important now than ever before because we're not the only ones who are struggling. There are entire government agencies that no longer exist today. And there are businesses that are really being impacted by the federal government, the changes in the federal government here in our city. And I think being able to directly support small businesses in our communities and the community members that we live with and we work with and serve, that's more important than ever before. And so, I think if one thing that this committee can really do is continue to advocate on behalf of these programs and champion them, because it would be a huge loss to the city if these programs did go away. And we should not be asking nonprofit organizations to make sacrifices to continue these programs. And I will, I have delayed salaries. I have loaned money to the organization to make sure that the finances, work out while we're awaiting reimbursement-based grants and things like that. And to one of your comments earlier, or one of your questions earlier, I don't think the financial model is sustainable. I think that there needs to be a reimagining of how these programs are funded. I think they need to be funded more sustainably. I think reimbursement-based grants, DSLBD, we get our first 2 disbursements in tranches, but then the last 15,000 is reimbursement based. So for District Bridges, that's $90,000 that we have to spend at the end of the fiscal year and then wait on to get reimbursed for. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I've heard that difficulty. Yes, thank you. Thank
And
you.
Brianne, sorry, Frank, this might clarify something. Sorry. Bryn, you used to have Lower Georgia Avenue though, right?
We still do. We
You
still
still
do.
do. So you overlap then with Alex Padro's Shaw Main Streets. There are two main streets servicing Lower Georgia Avenue.
Our boundary ends at Berry Place.
Okay. Yeah. When I looked at Alex's map, it looked like it went straight up. So I'll take a look at maps and see where we're at. But I think that might have been part of the confusion. Frank, you had one more question, and then I want to make sure we wrap up and
Yeah,
get through the
yeah.
business.
The other, actually, it's a two-part question. I'll try to be quick here. I'd like to understand the turnover has been great, has been discussed already on Main Street, U Street, Main Street, and I think we've suffered because of that. You know, I mean, there's relationships that are necessary, long-term relationships are necessary. Understanding people that have been here for a year or 40 years is important. And so, my question to you is: are there any within the seven, is it six or seven district bridges programs, do you have a calculation or a metric regarding turnover for your managers for your respective bids? But then also, there's 29, I believe, Main Streets programs. Is there a metric from DSLB? The acronym just always eludes me, but Small Business Agency. Is there a metric from them that describes or analyzes the tenure of a Main Street manager? And then I just have a follow up just related to this.
Yeah. So from DSLBD, I don't believe there's any reports on that. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of the issues is that it's not apples to apples. So there are Main Street programs that are within larger organizations. There are Main Street programs that are like us, where we're multiple organizations. And then there are Main Streets that are like Alex, where he is the sole employee. I think you have contractors, Alex, as well. But so, there are programs, like one of the things for us, like it was very important to me that we provided 100% healthcare for all of our employees. That was because I was on Medicaid when I first started this job, and I ended up in the hospital from burnout. We shouldn't be asking executives to either have their passion job or have healthcare. And so that was something that, like, in building our model, was very important to me, and to our board. So, but there are other organizations, not every, there's organizations where the executive gets health insurance through their partner. And so that is not something that they need to build into the organization. So I think that's one thing that's really hard to look apples to apples at these different organizations. But I would say in general, in the nonprofit sector, you see high burnout rates, low compensation, and low benefits. And I think that's systemic to the sector in general. National Main Street has a study that was done several years ago that looked at the tenure of Main Streets nationally. And again, this is difficult to look at apples to apples because the majority of Main Street programs are in rural environments. And so if you're looking at, a rural Missouri Main Street versus the 29 programs in DC, like it is very, very different. Cost analysis is different, salaries, all of those kind of things. So the national statistic was 18 months, that the average Main Street director stayed for 18 months. I think the most recent one that had increased to, I think, about 2 years, but it's still, they were talking at the last conference that it was still too high. The turnover rate was still too high, and the compensation. I did a presentation at the National Main Street Conference this last year, and I showed some statistics from their report about the national average of Main Street director salaries versus compensation, like total compensation. So all that to say, it's very hard to actually show apples to apples data across our DC Main Streets. We do have a report. This year was very unusual because I basically told my entire staff, if you find something more stable, you should take it. So we have had very high turnover, but that was because I told people that they should. But prior to that, our average was I don't want to misspeak. I will pull up that report and I'd be happy to send that as well.
So I'll be real quick. I know we're spending a lot of time. So I look at two models, one Main Street District Bridges and one Shaw Main Street. So one has more decentralized power and empowers the director or manager to do more. And I find there, could be some issues there. I'm looking at two different models, and I won't conclude or say publicly which one I think is better, but I just find there might be some removed capacity to be responsive to the community in the model that we've been looking at on U Street, the one that's serving us, and that therefore some of the turnover. And I'll just speculate, postulate. I'm just an average person watching the show. I don't have deep knowledge, but just peripheral understanding of the two operations. So,
well, I can actually address that with data. We actually are doing a decade in review. We've just done a data analysis of the last decade of our work, and we're going to be releasing that report in, it'll either be the mid-November first week of December, and it actually looks at all of that Main Street data, including like volunteer capacity, turnover, fundraising, all of those pieces, and is basically making recommendations. That is then going to lead into the foundation of, we're doing an organization-wide strategic planning process over the course of the next year. And that is really going to kind of like reevaluate, like, how is the model working? Like, what tweaks do we need to make? What, all of those kind of things. So that we're releasing that report November, early December. And then the whole idea behind the strategic planning process is meant to be very community involved. And so we will be reaching out to you guys to be involved in that process and getting as much feedback and input. I love Main Street programs. I believe in these programs. I think they are very impactful and can be even more impactful. And so we want to be responsive to, critique and what the data tells us and what our communities are telling us. So that is a process that we are undertaking right now.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Huge thanks to both Alex and to Brandon Edward for being here tonight. This was it's not the last of the conversation. I'm hoping it's an important kind of kicking off and then reconnecting of ANC efforts and Main Street efforts with, as Krishna said, all of us working hard to serve the same goal and the same mission, which is to make these communities vibrant and successful and clean and safe. And we can all do our bit, given that resources are stretched thin everywhere. So thank you, and thank you for being generous with your knowledge and with your time. And I'll be back in touch, and would love to have you guys back again in the coming quarter.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Night.
All right, committee members.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to flip-flop our agenda. I'm going to promote Francois to panelist. We're going to take about 15 minutes on this topic, promote to panelist. We're going to take about 15 minutes to talk about this topic. This resolution is a draft resolution. It is something that Commissioner Barrio has shared with the ZPD committee to get their feedback on. He's sharing it with us tonight to get our feedback on it. It is broadly focused on housing affordability and thinking about a strategy to potentially, help increase the availability of housing stock and thereby drive down the cost of housing stock in the city. He's gotten some good feedback from ZPD, and he is looking for some feedback from this group. And I'm going to let him introduce the framework of the bill. You all got it earlier today. I'm sorry that you did not get it sooner than that. And so we're making sure that this group has a chance to ask Commissioner Barrio questions, to give him some feedback. And then what he is trying to do is to kind of get the kind of strongest, clearest resolution that he can, so that he can at some point take it forward to the commission itself, and then is looking to kind of have this discussion more broadly. I want to credit Commissioner Barrio with kind of raising the topic of housing affordability. Christian Brandt, who is the chair of ZPD, Commissioner Barrio, and myself are in the process, early stages of organizing what we're calling a joint task force on housing affordability. If anybody from this committee would like to participate in that task force, the goal is to kind of have a broad review and discussion about the factors that are driving housing affordability challenges, and then to kind of break those off into separate work streams to think about what we can be doing to tackle them. It's a pretty big plan. We're trying hard not to be overambitious, but what we're trying to do is to educate ourselves and educate others on what these drivers are so that we can have a thoughtful and data-driven approach. And this is, one of those areas that Commissioner Barrio has been thinking a lot about. So I will turn it over to you to share with the group and then to get your feedback.
Sounds good. Thank you for the introduction, Commissioner Fay. Yeah, so I know that it's getting late, so I'll try to keep my introduction brief so I can answer folks' questions. But basically, yeah, like Matt said, I'm here to discuss a resolution about the comprehensive plan, which is, DC's long-term guide for the city's growth, development, establishing policies for land use, and those matters. So I want to start by just saying that, right now in DC, housing is very scarce and expensive. A 2022 study pegged the shortfall at 116,000 homes, which is equivalent to more than a third of the district's entire housing stock. And so more than just being short of homes, right now we're short of family-sized homes. So homes with enough bedrooms for most households to start families. We know that housing costs are a major stressor for families. They're the main culprit behind homelessness in DC. They can, it causes evictions, displacement, and leads to all sorts of poor social outcomes, from bad public safety outcomes to, bad outcomes for our youth who are, need stable housing in order to focus on their studies and get ahead in life. And so, in order to improve affordability and expand home ownership, DC really needs to build more housing. Many areas of DC, such as most of ANC 1B, are already relatively dense. We have a mix of our sort of classic historic row house neighborhoods, as well as, multifamily apartment buildings. But there are significant outerlying areas in DC right now that have restrictive zoning that basically doesn't allow those neighborhoods to become gradually denser in the way that, DC has a long history of responding to a growing population by building row houses, which have historically been, housing for working class families in walkable neighborhoods. And so the resolution that I'm bringing before you guys to get your feedback on sort of follows the history of constructing townhomes in DC by legalizing by right construction of townhomes, ADUs, and up to 6 units per lot district-wide. And the projections from, these, core provisions that I'm hoping the comprehensive plan will adopt. The projections are that we can add, around 1,000 family-sized homes per year in a gradual manner that expands home ownership for district residents, but also is preserving neighborhood character through height limitations, setbacks, and I think those provisions can really help. And so, that would be 5 times the number of single-family homes that the district has built over the last decade, every single year. So this is a significant addition to our housing stock that we can add. And, unlike a lot of the new multifamily buildings, which are very important and the district needs more apartments, those apartments generally only have 1 to 2 bedrooms. But if we add more townhouses, these townhouses have closer to 3 bedrooms. They have more bedrooms. They're better for family formation, and I think that's an important goal that we should have as a district, is that we want families to be able to live in cities. And, these structures would also cost around 30% less than the existing, these new homes would cost 30% less than the existing structures. So we're also bringing down the cost of owning a home or renting, and we're adding to our housing stock to take pressure off the small handful of neighborhoods in DC where growth is currently concentrated, where we're building. It's only in a few places in DC right now. And so the idea is to distribute that more evenly across the city and in other neighborhoods. So I've already gotten feedback from ZPD. I've spoken with Chairperson Brandt, who generally supports the resolution. And, I've made some changes, but I really am happy to answer folks' questions. I know that there's like a lot of details. and there's, different provisions included in the resolution. But, I really am happy to answer questions and help explain anything. And yeah, talk about whatever you all are interested in
Let
regarding
me let me
housing.
do this because I heard what Commissioner Barrio said about the goals. I think it's important that folks are able to see the actual language itself because that's
Sure.
kind of what matters. Ian, I see your hand up, so I'll call on you next. But Francois, can you just take the group through essentially what you're asking for?
Yes. So, I mean, starting at the top, basically, we're asking for by right gentle density throughout the district, with the goal of increasing, housing production. So we're basically legalizing, the by right construction of up to 6 units, up to 3 stories in height, and then potentially the option to build more than that, but that would be a more discretionary process rather than sort of you have the right to build on this land because it is zoned for that already. Um, Also, legalizing the construction of townhomes throughout the district. We already have townhomes slash row houses in most parts of DC, so it's just making that possible throughout the district. Allowing for currently the district makes it really hard to build ADUs. They have to be very small. I believe the limit is around 700 or 800 square feet, something in that range. Maybe even smaller. And there's also owner occupation requirements, which make it hard to rent out those ADUs, which means it's very difficult to add to our rental housing stock, which obviously the district needs more of because we have such a shortage of homes. Also allowing for small scale subdivision. So basically, in order to build townhomes, you would have to divide a larger lot into smaller lots so that you are able to then build the townhomes and someone who buys the home can own the lot. Um, Removing side and rear setback requirements, which in other places around the country have made it difficult to build denser forms of housing. But, I think that, I'm not saying we should eliminate all requirements, or all setbacks. There is something to be said for preserving neighborhood character for, especially through that front setback. So I think that there's a way to do this, and that, the Office of Planning can figure out the details, but to preserve the neighborhood character while not creating provisions that make it very difficult to build more housing. Similar, like reducing the minimum lot size, which helps with those subdivisions, and then a shot clock basically for the various planning agencies, to give them 45 days to review, approve, or deny these types of projects in order to make sure that this happens quickly because we do have such a shortage of housing, and we don't want these new projects to get caught up in years of review. Yeah, and then the last statement is just, acknowledging that in order for people to have opportunities, they need homes, and we need to build more homes in the district. And that's important for people of all economic, racial, and ethnic backgrounds, especially given history of exclusionary zoning in DC and basically every city around the United States.
Okay. So I saw that Ian's hand was up first, followed by Krishna. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, Francois. This is excellent. And I think I'm a little scarred by the development of the police station lot, and
Mm-hmm.
and and I've been thinking a lot about, because it's a kind of situation where good people can disagree, right?
Yes.
So some people say, "Hey, we like this neighborhood. We'd like to keep it this way." It's not that people are not welcome. We just like people not to destroy it as they, So
Mhm.
and I think actually you're trying to give an answer here. You're saying, "Hey, let's try to just build dwellings that they fit into the neighborhood." Maybe it means the real density goes up by 20, 25, 30% because of the way that you've structured, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the nature of the neighborhood will remain the same. At least that's your ambition.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's exactly the right way to do it. The one thing that comes to mind, if you need a case for strengthening your proposition, would be Harrison
Mhm.
Square. Are you
Hmm.
familiar with that?
I'm
Okay,
not.
so it's down here on 12th and V,
Okay.
where when they basically raise the city block and then they put up
Ah,
these
okay.
row houses, right? So they have an
Yes. Yeah.
inner row and an outer row. And I lived there for a bit. We rented a house for a couple of years.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I've walked by that many times. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But so there are a couple of preconditions. One was the developers, however they did it, they got the whole block so they could
Mhm.
do it cheaply. and it's very much, in the spirit of the Washington row home, but it's also, I mean, to call it it's a modest row home, but it really works, and it's a fantastic. I don't know who designed it. They have some stuff further south as well, the same builders. It's just a
Okay, it
wonderful
is
place to
beautiful. Yeah,
live.
it's pretty nice, and it does fit pretty well into that area, I feel
It
like.
it does, but it's very dense. But it's
It
so
is.
well
It is.
built,
Yeah.
you don't really notice it. So I would, and there are only setbacks at the front, not in the inner circle, and so on. So anyway, so
Yes.
if
Yeah.
people ask you where might it work, this is a good example. Yeah.
That's really helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, all the best. Yeah, go for it. One addition is you might want to investigate is enhancing small homes
Hmm.
to the back, right? So I'm
Hmm.
thinking of my neighbors at Seaton, right? Some of them have actually, these are small row houses, really small, and
Hmm.
they are restricted to add an outdoor, something that was a patio and then enclose it and then add a room.
Hmm.
I understand from my neighbors, it's very difficult to get that through for zoning reasons. I think
Yes.
if that
Yeah.
was changed, you might be able to add, I don't know, 5% of square footage in these type of
Hmm.
areas fairly easily. So that's my comment.
Yeah.
Thanks, Francois.
All right, Krishna.
Commissioner Bigelow, thank you so much for putting this together.
Of
I
course.
can see you've put some heart into here. I just want to say also, just to echo what Ian said, I think you're actually I'm someone who's very suspicious of adding more density into the district.
Hmm.
I live in a condo, and they tell me there's 19 months of unsold condos. It seems like
Hmm.
we have a
Hmm.
lot of them, but I understand that other people have different views on that. And I think you're taking exactly the right approach to say, how can we be building more single family housing? So I just wanted to thank you for that. I think that is the right way. Looking at the language that you proposed, two quick questions, or because you're sort of throwing out some very broad principles, and I know that's sometimes the way an ANC resolution has to be. Uh, Two clauses I'm looking at: remove side and rear setback requirements, modify front setback requirements to support gentle density while preserving neighborhood character. I think that's what Ian was getting to, that there are historic preservations reasons why you can't do that. And is that something you want to clarify in your resolution? I'm not making a critique of
Hmm.
it. I'm just trying to highlight that is where I'm trying to go with this, is saying, what are the real problems to adding more of this type of housing to our area as opposed to
Hmm.
district wide? And in other parts of the district, I think I could see how that would work. In our area,
Hmm.
and that is inherently in tension with the neighborhood character. People get upset when they see the blow ups and the blowbacks, and it's a constant source of tension that we have. So something I think you might just want to clarify. I'm not going to put any language into your mouth here, just something I want to highlight. The other thing that I was a little worried about is your shot clock idea. Um, I'm a little confused about how that would work, because these are all separate processes. So are you
Hmm.
saying 45 days at each agency, or 45 days total? I think you may want to just clarify that
Hmm.
in any language, because that's is a really short time for some of these government agencies to act. And I understand there's a need to push these guys along, but 45 days it can be a little tight. Commissioner Brandt and I had um, a few discussions earlier this year about the collapse at 1111 V Street, and that's an example of this. Okay, they were trying to build a larger building. They were using it for single family. They were using it for multifamily, not single family.
Hmm. Hmm.
But in some ways, DOB failing to do their due diligence and just papering it along, they didn't look at this correctly. So I mean, you've got to weigh the tension there. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
and I think maybe just going back to that is I would feel a lot more comfortable with resolutions like that if you had more in the operative provisions about creating single family / larger units, because that's clearly where the demand is. So again, from a market perspective, there was actually, this was in Bloomberg about 2 weeks ago, and there was a great survey looking at affordability of cities, and they were measuring it by what's your after-tax average income, how much is your rent, and how many Jimmy Choos could you buy as a result of that. Okay. And DC came in surprisingly well. That we actually, we're a high, for better or for worse, this is a high income area. 1-bedroom apartment rentals, not actually that expensive compared to the income level. So people had a lot of money to buy Jimmy Choos. So this is a positive thing. There was another survey that report that another group did that also was in Bloomberg about, I think it was yesterday, looking at 2 bedrooms. Now they didn't include DC, but if you think about where 2-bedroom unit prices are versus that same measurement of after-tax income, way different measurement and a lot more painful. And the market conditions drive us towards these 1-bedrooms. If we could find language to put in here that say, no, we want to see 2 bedrooms, we want to see larger units, and that's how we're going to give you the regulatory flexibility, I think that would be a powerful step. So again, you know this stuff, you've put a lot of effort into it. I don't want to nitpick too hard, but those are my 3 comments for you.
No, I think those are really helpful comments, and I would love to just touch on a few of them really quick. I think, yeah, I think you're right in terms of historic preservation. So this would not overrule, at least what I'm advocating for is it would not overrule historic preservation. But I think it would be helpful to state that clearly, like in the resolution. So DC obviously has historic preservation districts. A lot of ANC 1B is a historic preservation district. And so, that those rules would still apply. But you're correct to say that the areas where a lot of this would end up being built are generally, further out in DC and areas that are lower density that have, single family detached homes or, very large lots. So you might see some of this in ANC 1B, but it wouldn't primarily be in our area just because it's already relatively dense.
Yeah.
The density that I'm describing just basically exists in most areas of where we live right now. Though, like, it's interesting to hear about the redevelopments that they've done at Harrison, and that obviously made that block denser. So I think things like that could be possible. But yeah, I think I can explicitly discuss historic preservation in the district, in the resolution. And then in terms of the shot clock, I think, yes, I think the 45-day requirement was supposed to be sort of overall for all of the agencies to review the proposal. I think that this could be sped up through some pre-approved designs potentially for various, townhouses, row houses. Obviously, in our area, it was just the same design copied again and again and again, but in a very pretty and beautiful way that created, these neighborhoods we live in. And so similarly, I think there's something that could be done there. Also, just I think that you're right, with the collapse I'm forgetting the address, but the collapse of that building, I do think that I could, potentially work in language in the resolution saying, if we're going to have more single family homes being built in the district, we need more DOB staff. We need them to be more equipped to be able to review these applications so that they can make sure that the structures are sound and that they're safe. So I 100% am on board with expanding whatever resources or staffing needs that these agencies have so that they can give the projects, their due diligence.
And just for some additional color on
Yeah,
that, and the building collapse issue is that the issue, what came down to what they call, and this gets into some very technical stuff, is foundation underpinning. That in order to build on some of these older buildings, they basically had to dig out deeper because the foundation was 1 foot deep because it was built in 1890 and they wanted to go to 6 foot deep. And when you do that in a row house, you're actually digging under the other person's building. And that is what causes structural problems, and that it is somewhat technical and difficult to do that. And you need to make sure that's properly managed. And DOB did not have the real expertise to monitor that process. They sort of, they had plans and the plans weren't followed. And And so that's where I would just go back to that.
So they were digging
Let's
under the
yeah,
building
let's
structure.
do
They
this.
were,
Let's do this super technical. We're gonna have to get onto
Yeah.
that separately. Why don't you, Krishna, follow up with
yeah, we
Francois?
can, yeah.
Sounds good.
I got my hand up really quickly, and then Scott Pomeroy has his hand back up, and then we're going to wrap, and we're going to go to the bottle bill quickly so that Gene Hamza can make comments on behalf of the business community. Commissioner Berry and I have had a conversation about this before, so he's gotten some of the questions and my thoughts. What I want to highlight here, Commissioner Barrio, is that I am hearing very clearly from you a desire to encourage the development of more single-family townhomes. And I'm hearing broad support from this group about developing more kind of like density, more family-sized units, et cetera. But what I want to highlight is that the way that the resolution language is written right now, it will be used by developers to build multifamily, and it will be used by developers to build multifamily along the U Street corridor. And the reason I say that in the same way that Ian is scarred by 1617, I'm scarred by my own kind of developer confrontations here in LaDroit Park, where the attorney of the developer threw at me and members of the community every chance he got the words by right. And he essentially said that the way the zoning code is written is that by right, I can do as much as I want to do up to this limit. And so where I get nervous is that when we say that you have a by right to build 6 units, that means that every single townhome on Westminster can be bought at a top premium dollar by a developer and converted into 6 units. They can build all the way to the back if we eliminate any kind of limits. And so I think that what I'm hearing from this particular group is actually a lot of enthusiasm for creating density where density doesn't exist, and a lot of enthusiasm for essentially taking all the things that we love about U Street and saying, let's stretch them out, right? Let's make it more dense. Let's make it more townhouses, row houses, et cetera. But I do worry about something that says by right 6 units, because what I have found is that when something like that goes in, the developers really use that to their advantage to build smaller, more closely packed units, and they don't tend to put their energy into building a townhouse. That's more the exception than the rule. So I just want to highlight that and say I'm hearing lots of support for what you had verbalized at the beginning. I'm seeing some disconnect between the language as written, and I know you're continuing to work in and honing it. And so I'm really grateful that you took the time to come and present tonight. Scott, I'm going to give you a chance to talk because I know your hand is up new, and then we'll wrap on this topic and we'll go to Bottle Bill. Go ahead, Scott.
I just wanted to speak to Harrison Square. I lived next door to it for 25 years. The unique situations there was that was the old children's hospital site that the city owned, and then there had been a number of different development proposals on it, from a 90-foot residential building to a seniors facility, and then including many retail components. But it was really a factor of the city owning it, being within the historic district, and a very active community that was able to really work with the developers there to mimic what was in the blocks around it, particularly the block right to the north, where you had 12th Place that had that carries a central line down through Harrison Square, to establish basically a residential neighborhood to the north of U Street that hadn't been there for a number of years because of the hospital being in that location. But it was really how do you make a true neighborhood feeling north of U Street? That project did a very good job of knitting that all together. It was Donatelli and Klein that was the developer, and Aiken Young and Todd were the builders on that particular project. But I think it did capture the right density and not overshadow all of the single-family homes that were already lining each side of the lot as it existed. But
Yeah,
Great.
I'd love to learn more about that project. It seems really interesting, and it is in our backyard. Like I said, I walk by it all the time. It is quite nice. So
I can,
thanks for giving some color to that.
if you give me email, I've got photos of the site as it was when it was abandoned, as it was coming down, and as it was going up.
Scott, wasn't that also supposed to be the Whole Foods at one point?
Yeah, that was the original site of Whole Foods when they were first looking at Washington, D.C. and this part of the city. But then it got group organized to bring it down to E Street.
P Street, yeah.
Scott, Francois put his email in the chat, which is
Okay.
1b02@anc.dc.gov.
I will send a bit of history about that.
That sounds good. Perfect. Francois, Commissioner Barrio, thank you for coming. Thanks for sharing. And thank you, committee members, for your thoughtfulness on this. And I know we'll keep talking about it because the topic of affordable housing is critically important. And housing affordability is critically important. And so I know we'll keep going.
Thanks so much for sliding me into the agenda, Matt. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for your comments.
Great. Last but not least, and I'm going to promote Jean to, or Jean, can you just raise your hand and then I can allow you to speak. So we've got the council is considering a bottle bill. The bottle bill was proposed by Council Member Brian Nadeau, Ward 1. It has been co-signed / co-sponsored by like every other council member except for like 2. So this is one of those rare shows of unity on part of the council where they have all together said, hey, let's charge a bottle deposit to save the environment. What they are generally proposing, and I will confess that I have not had a chance to read the whole bill, but what I have kind of been educated on is they are proposing that there is an initial bottle tax of 10 cents. There would be a setup, kind of a return depot return setup where you'd be able to return your cans, your bottles, and get from Giant, Whole Foods, et cetera, your 10 cents back. And so it is intended to reduce the amount of bottles and cans that go into landfills. It would reduce the number of bottles and cans that would go into waterways. And so my understanding is that rather than putting your bottles and cans into your recycling bin, all of that you would be bagging up and bringing to a Giant Foods or a Whole Foods for return, and you would be getting your 10 cents per can or per bottle back. This is something that the commission discussed at its last meeting. We essentially said, we've got a lot of questions. I think we said, we generally are supportive of this, but gosh, we got a lot of questions because this seems like a massive implementation challenge. And so we would like to understand what the implementation is going to be before we all say that we're behind this. There is a unique perspective on this. I'm trying to think about how many bottles or cans I buy in a given week. Let's say that it's 12. And there are businesses in our community who buy and store a whole lot more than that. And so this particular resolution on the part of the commission, which was raising these different questions, was referred to the Committee for Economic Development so that we could hear from the business community on questions and concerns that they might have, and for us as the Economic Development Committee to talk about additional questions we might have. This is not a discussion about whether I'm going to ask that this is not a discussion about whether we support the bill or whether we're opposed to the bill. I'm going to say that this is an opportunity for us to focus on asking questions that we would like to get answered and clarified before we voice support or opposition, because I said there's a lot of devils in the details here, and I think we all need to make sure these questions get answered. I'm going to turn to Jean Hamza, who represents IMP. You all have met Jean over the past year of our meetings. IMP represents and runs 930 Club, Lincoln, Anthem, among others. And they do buy more than 12 bottles a week. And so, Jean, I just want you to have an opportunity to share your kind of perspective on the bottle bill, with this group so that we can understand what additional questions the commission would want to raise on behalf of our business community, having already heard a number of questions and concerns raised by the residential community.
Okay, thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks for presenting it, and also thanks for everybody here in the Econ Committee having a listen. Sorry, haven't been talking, so have to clear my voice. So I've read the bill, and it was a struggle. It is a very complicated bill. It talks a lot about the distributors, and I know that the council member, Nadeau, really tried to take the onus off the small businesses. And there's things in there like your local corner store that's under 2,000 square feet does not have to be a redemption center, which is where I bring that bottle back to get my 10 cents back. Now, some of them want to be redemption centers because they're going to have 10 cents tied up on every bottle that walks out of their establishment. And so for us, for IMP, I asked our financial controller what she thought it meant. And we do this with kegs. A keg is worth $50, $75, just the steel in a keg. And so every keg that comes into the venue, and I don't really want to get in the weeds, but I think it's important to explain this part. Every keg that comes in the venue, I have a $30 deposit on. And when they pick that empty up, and the company that brings it picks up only their kegs, okay, I get that $30 back. But the reality of it is I've always got $30 tied up, multiplied by many, many kegs in any of our venues except for Lincoln where we don't have them, okay? It's a part of the process. In theory, it all works out. You can treat it as a deposit, or you can treat it as the cost of a keg is actually $30 more than whatever it is you're paying. So the same thing is going to apply with this 10 cents. There's a lot of misinformation going on around that small restaurants and bars are exempt. They are exempt from being redemption centers. You cannot take your Coca-Cola bottle that you bought at Giant and redeem it at DC9, right? Or Dukem. You can't take, they're not going to redeem your bottle. They don't have to. That's what they don't have to do. But they will have a 10 cents deposit on every single bottle. And our financial controller thinks that's like a 3% outlay at a minimum. The Restaurant Association thinks it's 5 to 8% outlay. When you realize and understand what goes into operating, especially a brick and mortar restaurant, their profit margins are around 4%. And just thinking about really small guys, having any money tied up like that is a problem. But that's just one issue that needs to be, everyone to wrap their brain around. The distributors have to create the redistribution centers. That's where, so there'll be a company, instead of like they do with the kegs and everybody coming and picking up their individual cases of bottles, that's kind of crazy. Only one company in theory will be coming and getting them. I don't know who, we don't know who. Will they be only picking up bottles? Will they pick up cans? I don't know. They take them to the redistribution center. And I don't know if they clean them or whatever, but then they go back to be recycled, because that's the key to all of this, right? Is recycling. Those bottles aren't getting trashed. They're going back to Budweiser. They're going back to Coca-Cola. They're going back to Pepsi. Is my understanding, okay? Again, as Matt said, the devil's in the details. And again, I encourage everybody to try to read this bill. It is complicated. Another thing for us, I mean, these are operational issues, is storage. Everybody has a finite footprint. And I want you to, an example of try to explain what's going to happen with us. So let's say Anthem, they bring in, so we're bumping, we got a show every night, and depending upon the demography, I might need to bring in 200 cases of Miller Lite on Tuesday and another 200 cases of Miller Lite on Friday so I can get through the weekend. Because I only have space for 200 cases, right? Well, now I only have space for 100 cases because I have to keep room for empty bottles, 100 cases of empty bottles. That has to go, those bottles have to go somewhere. I can't break them. I can't put them into a trash bag. I'm going to have to put them back into their 6-packs or cases or whatever. That, trust me, is labor intensive because the club does our cups, which are recycled cups, and they're cups that get used over and over and over again. And it's super labor intensive, and it's also not cheap. But I don't want to get sidetracked, but we are involved in recycling. We also have been composting for years. We don't have any single-use plastic bottles. You can't go to the club and order a bottle of water. We have water stations, you know. We would encourage you to buy a water, a bottle water, you know, a water container, whatever. Anyway, so it's not that the club is against recycling. And please, you guys and ladies, whoever's on this call, I am a resident of, you know, since the early 80s. I am all over this as a resident. It's a no-brainer. I'm going to take the bottles I bought at Giant back to Giant, and it's recycling, and it's so easy, right? In theory. It's just not the same for the businesses. So we're not saying we're against this bill. It's supposedly not going to affect until 2028. That's to give distributors time. They're really fighting it. Understandably, you know, like they have to create whole new processes. And one of the things I don't understand, and I mean, maybe it could be explained to me, and I'd be happy to hear, is why we're already, all our bottles and cans and everything are being picked up by our, in theory, recycling garbage companies, right? We know they're a part of the problem. Why aren't we looking at fixing that problem? And why aren't, I mean, like, why don't they take them to the distributor or the redistribution center? Or I don't know.
So Gene, I'm gonna stop you
Stop me.
there. I'm gonna leave your mic open. I am gonna share very quickly with this group essentially the summary of the things that were already raised by the commission so that we can kind of pick up on that urging, I think.
Well, there is one more really important thing, and that's the fraud. And I think you have that in the resolution.
It is. Let me highlight that really quickly. So sharing with the group. So these are the resolved clauses. And I got a couple of things that I would like to not see on my screen. Okay. So the resolved clauses here, which are always kind of the things that we're asking for, they started by saying that we look favorably. We kind of we turned that into a more neutral statement and said we'd like to get more information. So one, the commission applauds the bill's foresight. What this essentially states is that the 10 cents is the starting point. If the district sees that the program is faltering, they can continue to increase that can deposit higher and higher to maintain continued participation. The second is that we are urging the district government to support and sustain an adequate return infrastructure. And so essentially, this is one of the areas of question to say, hey, what is your return infrastructure and how is it going to meet the density of the population that's living and returning around it? We're urging a bottle return program, sanitary collection. So there's a big concern about once you have all of these bottles and cans flowing to one centralized location, what does that do? People are probably not going to be rinsing them out if they're just bringing them back and getting their 10 cents versus sitting in their own recycling bin. And so there's a request to make sure that whatever's done is sanitary and clean for the neighborhoods where these redemption centers would be. Urges the council and implementing agencies to work closely with the business community especially the bar and restaurant, and this is where we're hearing from Gene. And then finally, calling on the council and implementing agencies to study and develop plans to respond to the potential for the return of beverage containers purchased in neighboring states and returned into the district en masse. And what this essentially is contemplating is that you have a company that is collecting all of the recycling in Bethesda and bringing all of those cans and bottles that they have collected in a giant truck into Washington, D.C. for redemption. And currently, there would be no rule against that, and it would bankrupt the program. And so the call here is to ask the council and the agencies to put some thought into how would they manage this, so that that does not become a problem down the road. Because unlike New York, where you tend to have some more significant barriers of kind of moving truckloads of bottles and cans into the city or into the state for redemption. DC is a bit more like Bethesda's right on the border, and it's literally a drive across the street to a redemption center where you could be cashing in your cans and bottles. So that's some of the questions that the commission raised. Gene's point, I think, helps us to better and to get more on the ANC record some of the concerns that are there relative to the business community. Krishna, to you, and then we'll kind of see if others have areas that they would like to see focused.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to Jean and make sure I got those numbers right from her. Jean, your estimate from all of the operations in your group was about 3%
Yeah,
additional cost. That was their controller.
Yeah, she was, just guesstimating.
And that the estimate, and I'm not holding you to this, I'm just trying to get this information from the Washington Restaurant Association. It's 8%.
I believe it was 5 to 8%.
5 to 8%, so a little bit higher, but still fairly significant numbers.
It is for small operators. It is for us too. It's just money you can never use. It's never accessible. I mean, unless you want to go do everything in kegs, and there's deposits on that too. So that's money. It's just not accessible to you. Like if you buy a case of water every week, that's $2.40 that's tied up, that you never get to spend because it's always tied up in the rebate, right? You just never get to spend that $2.40. Well, we're talking about hundreds, even thousands of dollars on various scales. And one thing I do want to point out about, like, the example I used at Anthem, where what I was talking about, we're only able to bring in 100 cases at a time. That means I have to have more deliveries. Doesn't mean I don't need those Miller Lite bottles and cases. It means I have to have more deliveries, which means a semi on the road, which means an environmental impact. And that's not a win-win. That's all.
So I think that's a good point, Gene. And what I would just say to the committee is I think we just need to clear up, why are we doing this bill again? What's the real purpose here? Well, okay, but is that the primary source of trash? Are we the primary source of trash? Is it coming in from Maryland? Are there other blowbacks here that we're not thinking about? I think that I would also say that there's a transition period. Other states obviously have this, and operators can live with it. But there is a transition period where it's going to be pretty painful. And is there a way to make that easier for our commercial businesses, because they are obviously dealing with some other stuff as well right now for the next few years?
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. And what I will say, and I'm really glad this committee is looking at it, the only government testimony, there were over 10 hours of testimony for this bill when it was introduced a week ago Wednesday. I think I'm losing time. But anyway, the only government witness was Nina Albert. They see this, the mayor sees this as an economic issue, and she did say the mayor does not support this bill at this time. And again, it's the devil's in the details. Maybe we can really make these details work. I would like to. I think the business community wants to be as user-friendly as we possibly can to the environment. It's not easy. So we want to. So we need the city to help us get there. And the bottom line is, if you get an invoice from your distributor, I don't care if it's liquor or beer or whatever, there's now all kinds of little line items on your invoices are like $5 delivery charge, $10 gas charge, $15 environmental charge, whatever it is from whichever company. We will be absorbing these costs, which means we'll be passing it on to the consumer. Just saying. That's the reality. I think Econ Committee knows well.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? I know we're losing folks, and I want to make sure I'm trying to make sure we wrap up here in the next 6 minutes or so. Any other questions or comments? Not just for Gene, but about the resolution, and then anything that we want to make sure that we specifically highlight back to the commission for inclusion in its resolution in early November. I mean, I think my big takeaway would be around just Krishna, to the vein that you were talking in, and reflecting what Gene had said, which is making sure that there is some kind of transition period, and that there is kind of the unique considerations of businesses are taken into account. I think I have a personal question, which I'll try to look at the bill itself or reach out to David Many, but I do have a question about what happens to recycling in the district. If we're not going to be recycling cans and bottles anymore. And then I think there's also there is actually a fair number of questions about how the redemption centers are set up.
Let's remember that, the district, we have multiple trash stream pickups here. So you've got the city picking it up and they're taking that stuff to recycling. But for example, my building has, a private pickup, as do most commercial buildings. I can tell you, they take our recycling bin and throw it in the landfill or burn it. They do not, there's no mandate under the Trash Acts to actually recycle any of that stuff. It's only the city that's been forced to recycle. And I suspect that the bulk of the trash in the District of Columbia that's being put into recycling bins is not recycled as a result of that. I can go off on the 74 Trash Act if you want me to, but I won't.
Well, I want to hear more about it, but I don't want to hear about it tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Frank.
That was the point I think Gene was making.
It's
a big. Why don't you fix that problem before you create another problem for business that can't afford, to be nickel and dime the way we don't support small business in this city very well, as most people at this table know. I'm not understanding why we are taking such a nuanced approach in a resolution instead of who's in support of this. I have to say this: it's a chicken or egg thing. 11 council members sign on as support because let's clap for ourselves and show all of our constituents we're so eco-friendly. Okay, however, none of them have looked at the details and understand that small business probably doesn't want this because they're being overtaxed as it is, underserviced as it is, and it's tough times for everybody. So why are we just generically all jumping on board saying let's create a resolution and talk about nuances when do we even need this thing at this time?
We're not, right? We're not. I mean, I think that's the reason why it was referred to this committee. Was that the takeaway from the commission at the last meeting where they considered it was we need another perspective. And since our committee has a no bullshit policy, and there were questions about the business community, it came here. Gene, let me ask you, and Frank, I commit that whatever I draft and send around to this group will be less nuanced. But I am going to do that and ask you guys for your input and feedback before the next commission meeting. Gene, what happens, and answer this, I guess, if you can and if you're comfortable, if you go through 200 cases of Miller Lite cans, do those Miller Lite cans currently at Anthem get recycled?
I'm assuming they have the same process we do at the club and I mean, the same company. And
Yeah.
to my knowledge, everybody's obligated in our business to put everything in clear, like 50-gallon clear plastic bags so they can see what's inside.
That's right.
So they can make sure they're recycling, but everything is supposed to be recyclable. So now if we've been always not always, but for about a decade composting our own thing, doing our own thing. And now so other than what the customers might throw into the trash, we don't sell tons of food, but other than that everything is bottles and cans. And at the time, we had compostable cups, and now we have these R cups, which are a whole different thing. A different company comes in, brings them in, then takes them away the next day after a show and washes them, and it's a real process. But we're determined to do what we can, and we know everyone can't do that. And do I think we'll survive this and figure it out? Of course we will, because that's our business, is figure it out and make the night happen, right? So we'll figure it out. But as I always do, am advocating for everybody else on U Street and these smaller businesses that are really struggling. And it's just, I told one of our local restaurateurs about the bottle bill, and all he could say was, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm just exhausted. I can't, ever since the pandemic, can't take anymore.
Yeah. Let's do this. I'm going to wrap us. Krishna, I want to talk to you next week. We're talking about a different topic, but let's also talk about trash and recycling. I want to kind of see where we're at with that, and I want to incorporate that into our comments back to the commission. Frank, we will not tiptoe. We will be kind of direct, and then committee members who are still here, I'll be sending a draft of our comments or recommendations around for edits and for sign off. I think we need a little bit more time to think about this. Jean, thank you as always for being here and for sharing your thoughts. Frank, I know you wanted to have two other new business items. Are they time sensitive? Can you email them to me and we can?
Yeah, no. I'm retracting them. I'm tired.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm glad we did the Main Streets discussion. It was important and timely, but it took longer, I think. And
and I have a new business item. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll email the committee tomorrow.
Frank, if you can, so it's not just to me, email the full committee. Let's have them out there, and then that way we will work them into our November agenda. All right, everybody. We are adjourning our meeting at 9:21 p.m. Thank you as always. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Good night. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your help.
Hey, thank you, Jane.